Did Jessica ask for clarification? Yeah, so Mark is excited because he can be here for
just checking we're still on for next year.
I thought this was going to be like a front page and a front page.
I have a
Tamara.
I need to work with it. So I'm probably going to sit in the car and just talk out there.
Hey, I didn't get a chance to talk to you. I wanted to touch base with you about something interesting.
Thanks, Andy.
Where's my prediction? I had my prediction in there. How come you guys didn't get it? Didn't see it? Okay. 8:05. Okay.
So Brandon, there's two possibilities.
That's when you have a license for that because you're supposed to know.
It's so official. Yeah. Yeah.
Like most of those houses on the land, all facing the road, right? It's easy.
So you're part of all four schools?
Yeah. Yeah, just a short little, like, 2 or 3 things, yeah.
You're a senior.
This year, yeah.
This year, well, you were on last year. Was this?
Yeah, this is my second year doing this, yeah. Yeah.
What was the final outfit change at my house this evening? Oh, okay. So not what she planned. No. I can only imagine. That's why I was like, I'm leaving. I'll go sit in my car and just listen to music.
For those of you who have just joined us after closed session, I'm Jeff Conwell, Board President. I'd like to introduce my fellow trustees, Lisa Pelosi, Maria Haug, Julio Guin, and Trustee Jeannie Kerr could not be with us this evening. Also joining us tonight is our student representative to the board, Ms. Sammy Rabin. I'd like to introduce our excellent district staff, Superintendent Dr. Mary Lou Wilson, thank you for being here. Chief Business Official, Ms. Andy Stubbs, thank you. Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Ms. Mary Allen. Nice to have you at the table. Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and Governing Board, Ms. Erica Madrigal. We are delighted you're here this evening in person, and we do have a few people, which is always nice, or viewing on channel 27 or our new YouTube channel. A copy of the board meeting video will also be available on our website at www.sthelinaunified.org. In connection with the closed sessions item A and B, the board received information from staff and provided direction. Please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are on to item number 6A, which is public comment for tonight's board meeting. And this would be anything that is not on the agenda. Does anybody wish to address the board on something that's not on the agenda tonight? Thank you. And the rules are up there as well when you do, if anybody would like to address the board. Presentations tonight, 7A is a presentation on the Vine Trail Napa Valley. Mr. Chuck McMinn, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Yes, I'm here tonight with my Vine Trail hat on, not my Nepalurns hat on. But I'm here to talk about a new idea that we have for the Vine Trail that we are just now opening up for community comment and input on. And it's about what we call our Schools to Schools Trail. But before I get into that, I want to give you a little bit of an update on the connection between St. Helena and Calistoga of the Vine Trail. And at the end, I'll give you a little bit of an update of a connection from St. Helena south toward Yountville. But let's start with the St. Helena Calistoga section of the Vine Trail. That is a $9 million, it's about a 9-mile run that is a $9.3 million project. That in 2012 we got an anonymous donation from a citizen in Calistoga to do the engineering feasibility and to try to figure out the route and how we would make it happen. And over the last 6 years we have gotten to the point where we have a route. That route requires us about 75% of the way it's on Caltrans right away, but for 25% we need at least some private landowners to donate easements, 11 in fact, and we have now verbal agreement from all 11. The project is funded about $6.9 million from state and federal grants, and then 2.4 from philanthropy that the Vine Trail has committed, 1.4 of which we've already raised and in some cases spent to do further engineering and environmental studies, and $1 million which we still have yet to raise between now and the end of the construction of that particular section, which is estimated at 2022. In addition, the city of St. Helena, the city of Calistoga, and the county have contributed about $650,000 in general fund money or other money to the project. The route, it's way too small to see here, but the presentation's available. But generally, the route is from the limits of this particular project, which is on Pratt Avenue. The Vine Trail runs north on the east side of Highway 29. It takes a diversion off of Highway 29 onto Ellers Lane, and I'll talk about that in a second. Comes back to Highway 29. And then continues on the east side up to close to the south entrance to Bothay Park near the Cal Fire Station, crosses the highway and goes into the state park, goes 1 mile through the state park to the other end, crosses back over the highway to the east side and runs up the east side of Highway 29 to Dunawheel Lane, where it takes a turn, goes down about a half a mile on Dunawheel to the existing trail that goes north by Clopagas into the center of Calistoga. The issue that was the hairiest in order to resolve was how to get through what I call the Serpentine, the windy section that's north of Eller's Lane and south of Big Tree Road. And the way we're doing that, and we have the landowner's approval to do that, is to come along on the very right-hand side there, the big reservoir you see is on Larry Turley's property. To come along the highway in front of Larry Turley's property, cross Louis DeConnick's property, the next property to the south, along the Highway 29, and then to come along the south side of Louis's property, east and west, 1,400 feet, to connect up to Eller's Lane. All of that piece and the other pieces I've described are all Class 1 trails, so it's a 10-foot wide dedicated path. The little piece that's along Eller's Lane as it runs north and south, and again along Eller's Lane as it runs east and west back to Highway 29 is what's called a Class 3 trail, which means that the cars and the bicyclists share the road. You may have seen arrows with a bicycle in the pavement. That's the designation for a Class 3 trail. It's a very low volume road. We've done traffic counts on it, and it is very safe to have a Class 3 trail for that little bit to get back to Highway 29. You might ask why we are taking that U-shaped turn rather than going right along the highway. It's because the two private landowners that owes those two parcels were reluctant to grant an easement to the Vine Trail to go across their property, and there was not sufficient width to be totally on Caltrans right away. But the good news is we did find a route, and that that route needs a little more blessing from the County of Napa, which will hold the easements for along this particular area, but we're working really hard to try to get the easements nailed down so that we can move forward and actually draw down some of this $6.9 million in grant money to take the project through full engineering between now and the end of 2019 into 2020, and then the actual construction of this section will only take, less than 6 months. It's really, once we get all the ducks aligned and all the engineering done, it actually doesn't take very long to build a trail like this. Now let me shift gears to what's new, what has not been reflected in the Vine Trail's route through St. Helena in the past. And maybe I should start with what that route is. The official route of the Vine Trail that we discussed and were supported by the City Council almost 10 years ago now was to come up on the east side of Highway 29 near the railroad tracks into town until we get to Charter Oak, and then go from a Class 1 trail again to a Class 3 trail, a share the road, going east on Charter Oak, going north on Allison, going east on McCorkle, going north on Mariposa, going east on Pope on a Class 1 for just a few feet to Star Avenue, and then going north again on Star Avenue and its extension through to Adams Street. All of that is on Class 3. It's shared. Unlike Eller's Lane, there's lots of traffic on all those roads, especially the traffic that's trying to get around Highway 29 or scoot out on Pope Street. And it's always bothered me, and it's bothered us, that we didn't have a safer way to get kids through town. And it was on the opposite side of Highway 29 from where all the schools were, where the churches are, where the Boys and Girls Club is, where the teen center is. And we recently started talking to some of the landowners on the west side of Highway 29 about the possibility of creating a schools-to-schools trail. A school that would go from here north, a block off of Highway 29, across Rodney Friedenrich's parcel, which is, it has a dedication already for a Class 1 trail, past the backside of the Cliff family property, and they're very supportive of this, past the backside of the old Constellation offices, which Ted Hall now leases, and he's very supportive of, And then behind Gott's on the Too Good property, and we have not yet to talk to the Too Goods and find out their position on this. And then across the creek into the PG&E reclamation / potential parking area, and then up Oak Avenue, all the way past the elementary school, the Boys and Girls Club, the Catholic Church, the Presbyterian Church, the Methodist Church, and continuing on Oak all the way up and dead-ending into RLS Middle School. That's the idea, and the idea is to see if we can figure out a way to do this with a Class 1 trail on Oak Avenue. We think that it might be feasible, but we won't know until we conduct a feasibility study. Part of doing a feasibility study is to collect all kind of community inputs, your inputs, the neighbors' inputs, the parents' inputs, the church's inputs, the city's inputs about what might be possible. And we raise it now. We have not started. We have not proposed this. The Vine Trail's position is that we are open and inclusive, and so before we instigate any sort of a feasibility study, we want to make everybody aware of what we might be trying to do and solicit your inputs as part of this study that we would do. A couple other factors that go into to this. We think that, number one, it would be a Class 1 trail, so it would be a lot safer for about the 1,000 students a day that use these schools. We think that if this section of the trail is similar to other sections of the trail that we already have open between Yountville and Napa, we think that it'll take about 470 cars a day off the roads. At each one of our counting stations, and there are 3, we get about 100,000 uses per year on each section of the trail. And the other thing about it is that 75% of those uses are by locals and only 25% are by tourists. So the notion that this is somehow just for tourists is really not the case. It's really much more about a trail that allows our citizens to get exercise, that, you know, to have an alternative means of travel, of getting around town safely. The cons, of course, is does it fit? We won't know that until we do the feasibility study, and we're fully aware that there are affected landowners in the area that we have to listen to very closely. And you know, our belief is when we try to do the Vine Trail is that we're trying to do something for the community. We're not trying to do something to the local residents. And if we can figure out a way to bring those local, all the constituencies, yourself, the city, the local residents, into the discussion, we're more than happy to do it. Some of the other issues on the con side is what about congestion? It's already it's a kind of a tight corridor already. What do we do about parking? First blush, we might be able to do this with the removal of 1 to 5 parking spaces on Oak Avenue south of Adams Street and no parking places north of Adams Street if we were to eliminate the sidewalk on one side of the road and double the width of the sidewalk on the other. That's one of the potential engineering solutions to how to get up Oak Avenue. A couple other factors that we're aware of and we'd like to bring into the study are that the city is already talking about possibly using the PG&E lot as additional parking. They're also exploring the option of using the closed Catholic school as either a temporary city hall and or public parking. The residents have already talked about, have asked the city if they can make parking on Oak Avenue permit only. And the city is also looking at whether it makes sense to make Oak Avenue one-way only in order to reduce the amount of cut bypass that happens bringing folks off of Highway 29 during the commute hours. So all of those, I think, are factors that would weigh into this feasibility study, and maybe we come out with some recommendations that are more than just the trail fits. It may be several other pieces of this complicated equation. So as I said, the next step is to fund that study. If I'm meeting with the City Council next Tuesday to make this same presentation to them and solicit their at least approval that it does make sense to do a feasibility study rather than this doesn't make any sense, just stop it now, stick with the east side route that you have. The other thing I'll say is if we do this west side route, if we figure out a way to do it, it would not be instead of the east side route. I think the idea of being able to have a somewhat safer way to get around on both sides of Highway 29 makes a lot of sense to us. We will have that in Yountville. There's the east side route now, which is their little spur on the side of 29. As the Vine Trail goes north from Yountville, there will be a west side spur as well. We have the same situation in American Canyon where the Vine Trail route down there is on the east side of Highway 29 in front of the American Canyon High School, and the Bay Trail is on the west side of Highway 29, more along the water. So we have this situation of Highway 29 being a barrier to our residents in getting around without a car in other places, and our thought would be to handle it the same way here and to keep both of those alternatives for the Vine Trail viable. So that's that on the topic. You know, if you have thoughts or comments that we should be aware of as part of the feasibility study, that would be wonderful. If you have, if you are enthusiastic enough to make a recommendation to the City Council that they consider this, that would be wonderful. And so I'm going to shift topic just a little bit for one other place where you will be involved with the Vine Trail, and that is the run from Yountville to St. Helena. We have started the engineering on that. That also requires some private easements. 12 private easements across 16 parcels are needed. These are those 12 properties, and you notice that your name is on them. That the Vine Trail will need a couple feet of encroachment onto the preschool property that you operate down there, because we cannot fully fit the Vine Trail on the wine trains right away as it passes your property. The wine train has said that they are fully supportive of the trail, and we can be as close to the tracks as safety wise and legally wise feasible, but their width varies as they go up and down the valley. It's not clearly wide enough everywhere. But, and in particular, as it passes the preschool, it's almost wide enough, but not quite. So at some point in the future, we will be coming back and asking you, as part of the other 11 or 12 easements that would occur along the corridor, are you in support of letting us encroach a little bit on your property in order to bring a trail in front of the preschool? So that's my update, and I'm happy to take questions.
First of all, is there any public comment on this agenda item? Okay. Trustees, questions or comments?
So I do have a question both to both the proposed easement in Rutherford, and I would right now I would be open to whatever the superintendent's office decides would be the best way forward after they do a study, but I think it sounds like something that is doable. And we also we do have an unused portion of property there as well next to the preschool, which it might be nice as it developed as a rest stop at some point instead of sitting as a vacant lot. The way it's been for years. As to the Oak Avenue, the first thing that came to my mind when you were talking was the bus stop, and that was something that wasn't mentioned. So we do have the buses stopping on Oak,
right?
And I just, for me, that would be a safety issue as to where exactly the bike route would be running, how we would be getting kids onto the bus, off the bus, for field trips as well. All those, that's something that really has to be looked at and considered in any study.
Absolutely, that's a very good point.
Any other questions or comment? Julio?
I have a comment also regarding the school-to-school trail. Yeah, I mean, I really like the idea of promoting this trail, like promoting it for kids and adults to obviously ride to school, ride to work. Yeah, the same idea. I mean, I like the portion where it goes behind Gott's roadside through the creek, like in that area. but for me too, like just even dropping off on Oak Avenue, my kids go to the elementary, and in the morning and afternoon, I mean, there's barely any parking there. People
Right.
are just like trying to drop off, pick up, and even sometimes like parking illegally or, you know, pulling in the driveway. So for me, it's a safety thing too. I don't know if that portion, if you guys have looked at other routes off of Oak Avenue, but for me, that portion is super busy. I don't know if it would be the best for the safety of the kids, but but I like the whole idea of having that school to school trail and having that available to kids and families.
I agree. I like the idea as well, and my concerns have been already stated, so.
Okay.
So maybe just one thought, or no, keep going, Jeff.
Just a second, Jack. As far as Dr. Wilson, what options are available for the board at this time? Obviously, we're still in a very growing phase. I think we're all about kids' safety and exercise, and anything that would, I'm sure a feasibility study would figure out how everything would work, but I'm wondering if we have an option of potentially supporting it through a resolution or something. Is that?
Yes, staff could bring back a resolution to you at the November board meeting that would be in support of the Vine Trail. Another option might be hearing from Mr. McMinn that he's speaking to the City Council on Tuesday. Staff could draft a statement of some sort that he could have at City Council on Tuesday if you felt compelled.
Okay.
We can do both.
So, trustees, I'd like to kind of flush this just for a minute. Go ahead.
I just to echo what Julio also said, I just remember as a parent, Oak was where I parked to pick up my kids,
Right.
and it is used a lot. There's a lot of cross traffic during pickup and drop off hours, in addition to the bus. So that would have to be part of any feasibility study before I could feel comfortable signing I support the idea of a Vine Trail. It's the portion on Oak Avenue in front of the elementary school that concerns me.
That you'd like to see
A study.
Right, before.
Yeah, I think certainly that's all we would be asking for, is that does it make sense to do a study, or is it got such a fatal flaw at this point that we should not even consider it? We won't know what the feasibility study produces until we do it, and maybe they'll have some other ideas of, hopefully they'll have 2 or 3 ideas that will, allow it to work and be safe and the buses to work, but we won't know until we do the study. And I'm not trying to prejudge what the conclusion is. Maybe the conclusion is you got to go another block to the west, or you got to do something different, or you got to make Oak one way, and with everything that means, and maybe that's not so feasible, and so.
I would, agree with that. Just saying that I think that study has to be done to see if there is the fatal flaw, as you termed it, because that would allow a full endorsement, if you will. If it says that this is going to be possible and safety has already been addressed, and then I think that it's easy as a community, as a board, for people to get behind it. But I would support the study and then seeing what it have to say from that.
Okay, I'm kind of hearing that. So basically, we could do a resolution that we would support a study, not necessarily that we are going to step out because we don't know what they're going to find, but that we would support a study, and we think it would be a great idea to have a solution. I'm getting 3 head nods.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yes.
So with that, we could give that kind of a recommendation that could go to the city council, and also that we would draft as well for our next board meeting.
Yes,
Perfect.
we will have it for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mann.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Okay, we're on to item number 7B, which is a presentation by the student representative to the board, Ms. Sammy Raven, please.
Thank you. So this month at the primary school, they've really been working this year on reducing waste. So the second graders are all part of the green team, and the green team members help students recycle and compost their lunch during lunchtime. And on a regular day, the primary school would use 10 to 12 trash cans in the lunchroom, but now they're down to 2 trash cans a day, which is really good. So the trash cans are for garbage, and then any other food waste is composted at the end of the day. So then at the elementary school, since the beginning of the year, the students have been eating outside on tables because of the renovation of the cafeteria. And so that's really taught them manners and how to clean up after themselves, just so that they can help out the maintenance workers and custodians all around. And they've really been enjoying that. So you can see them all eating together in the top right corner. And the new cafeteria was just unveiled on the 9th, I believe. Yeah. And so they cut the ribbon and everything, which is just in time for the rainy season that's coming up. The students also finished reading the book Flora and Ulysses, and they had their final celebration of that book on the 4th of October, where 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders all got together in groups of mixed grades, and they read stories that they had written from a narrative perspective, and it was a really good chance for the students to get a little bit more comfortable with each other, and for the different grades to interact, because some of them were nervous, but then it ended up being really good for all of them. And the school also had their first reading counts assembly in order to acknowledge all the hard work that the kids have put in. And so 9 kids have already reached the 100 points club. 3 people have already reached the 200 points club. 1 kid has 366 points, and another student has 463 points, which is really impressive, being that we've only been in school for about 2 months. And so they get points by reading books and then taking comprehensive quizzes about them. And seeing the really high scores just kind of inspires the other kids to work hard, and so they can also get acknowledgement and they can be part of the clubs. So at the RLS, there's a new leadership class that they're trying out this year, and it is being taught by Miss Vicky. And the class is made up of 8th graders, and then groups of 7th graders are rotated in throughout the trimesters. And it's been a major success so far. The students seem to be really enjoying the hands-on kind of experience that they get by planning different things, like a Halloween dance that's coming up on the 19th, and making posters for the various events that are coming up. And it also gives the kids a chance to see if they like the class, so that they can maybe enroll in it their 8th grade year, and then they know for the future when they come into high school, they know about the leadership class already. This school also started using the Stop It app to report bullying. And they've been mostly working on preventing cyberbullying and promoting kindness through posters that the leadership class has made. And those are posted all over campus. And also, all the students and teachers received a copy of the book Refugee, which tells the story of 3 different refugees from different time periods and how they all came to the United States to have a better life. And it was the Napa County Reads Book of the Year this year. And so everybody has enjoyed the book so far, and it's being integrated into the different classes, like the history classes and the English classes, and the students have been responding to it really positively. Then finally at the high school, we had our first student congress meeting, which you can see on the right, and it was on September 18th, and it was led by the new Culture and Climate Committee that we created in leadership. During that meeting, since it was the first one, we talked about like the mission statement and the purpose and the goals for the rest of this year. And then in later meetings, we're going to be splitting up into different groups and focusing on specific issues that we want to address for this school year. Also, Red Ribbon Week has turned into Red Ribbon Month. Sorry, it's a tongue twister. So it's the whole month of October, but we're going to be having events during homecoming week at lunch. Some of these events include drunk goggle simulations and an art competition. And the purpose is to encourage kids to stay drug-free and to live a healthy lifestyle, which is very important. Also, everybody's getting super excited for homecoming, which is coming up in a few weeks. My fellow ASB officers are going to talk a little bit more about that, but a few dates to remember is float building starts on the 22nd, and then the Powder Puff game is on the 25th, and the homecoming parade is on the 26th, and then we have the dance on the 27th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as we talked about at last meeting, I'm not sure that we do have any under student learning and achievement that we have any that's actionable items tonight. But if we do, after a motion, I'll ask you to vote if you'd like to. Okay. All right. Presentation. Let's see. We had a lead in already. ASB High School. Go for it.
Hello, my name is Blaney Adamson. I'm the ASB president, and I'm here with Johnny Gamble and Juliana Robledo, who are also in the St. Helena High School ASB. And we're here to talk a little bit about homecoming, to kind of like update you guys, fill you in on like what we're doing, what's going on, so you kind of know what's going on. Our theme this year is movie genres, which was voted on by the leadership class and student council. And it was announced in a rally a couple weeks ago, so everyone's pretty excited. Everyone knows what's going on. We're each going to talk about 2 days. So Monday, October 22nd, the dress-up day is Men in Black Monday, which is dress up like a spy day. And then the only thing taking place that day is that it's the first day of float building, which takes place from 3:30 to 8 o'clock in the senior parking lot, which is the one in between the swimming pool and the football field. And then Tuesday, October 23rd, the dress-up day is sequel day, just to kind of play off of the movie genre theme, which is Twin Day. And again, we have float building from 3:30 to 8 o'clock.
Hi, I'm Juliana, and I'm ASB treasurer this year, and I'm a senior. And I'll be talking about Wednesday, October 24th, and Thursday, October 25th. So for Wednesday, October 24th, our dress-up day is like hero versus villains, so kind of like competing of the genres. And then our only event that day is float building from 3:30 to 8, and then we also have the dinner that's put on by the parent group that night, as well as Tuesday and Monday. And then Thursday, October 25th, our dress-up day is Throwback Thursday, and our focus for that is to dress like your favorite decade of movie genres. And then that night, we have float building from 3:30 to 6:30, and then the Powder Puff game is that night, 7 to 8, and it's $5 per person at the door.
Hi, I'm Johnny Gamble. I'm the ASB secretary this year. So on Friday, October 26th, our dress-up day is Saint Spirit Wear. It's like Saint shirts, just like this, or a float theme. And then the events, so we have an early release that day, and that's so we can stage for the parade, which begins at 2 o'clock. And then after the parade, we have the Lyman Park Rally. And then that evening, we have the JV and varsity football game. I believe it's against Lower Lake. And then at 8 p.m., right around halftime, we have the royalty reception. Oh, okay, that's the home. Okay, this homecoming court will be announced at halftime. Sorry, just read that a little bit. Then the next day on Saturday, the 27th, the homecoming formal is from 7 to 11 at the Napa Valley Marriott. And so that finishes our homecoming week. And then in addition to this, today in our leadership class, we had a power session on the LCAP steering committee student panel questions. So we talked about the questions in class and gave our input to the questions.
Wonderful. Any questions or comments? Anything from the trustees?
Have a great week.
Have a lot of fun. Sounds
Thank
great,
you.
guys.
Thanks.
Could the students,
Oh.
Johnny, could you all come and shake our hands, please?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. We have gifts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Johnny, nice to see you again. Thanks for coming. Brandon, thanks for coming. Yeah. Appreciate it. Nice job. Oh, picture time.
Do you want us up there?
In back? Okay. And like we're working. There you go. This is different. And as a reminder, presentation 7D, which was by the RLS Stevenson Middle School, their ASB officer has been postponed until the November meeting. So that takes us to item number 8, student learning and achievement, the monthly presentation on the 2018-2019 Local Control Accountability Plan. Mr. Chris Heller. Oh, just kidding.
Well, I was
Miss
going to
Mary
crack
Ellen,
a
welcome,
joke, too,
welcome.
thinking that I have really big shoes to fill tonight.
And I bet they are big.
I'm excited to present tonight. So, as Mr. Heller has done from the previous board meetings, we are trying to give bits and pieces of the LCAP. So, if there's additional questions that need to be had, or we want to go a little more in depth on any of the material, we can. So tonight, we have 3 goals that are in the LCAP. Tonight we're going to be addressing goal number 2, which is right in the middle there. All students will demonstrate increased academic achievement as measured by formative and summative assessments. We have several actions under this goal, and one of the actions that we have is called multi-tiered system of support. And I think you've been hearing us say the acronym MTSS quite a bit. So tonight we're just going to give an overview of the MTSS. Just to give you an idea of what MTSS means, it's a support system designed to promote equity for all. And this is a wonderful visualization right here where it shows the difference between equality and equity, because oftentimes people interchange those words and they mean two totally separate things. Equality means in a classroom setting that the teacher is providing a lesson to all the students. Everybody gets the same lesson, which happens. Equity comes into play when we make sure that every single student understands the lesson and can access the lesson. And that could be scaffolds, that could be larger fonts, that could be material to where they have it given to them in Spanish. Whatever needs to happen for that child to be able to learn, that's equity compared to equality. The state of California, the Department of Education, describes multi-tiered system of support. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's a couple of words that really stick out in my mind. And that's a comprehensive framework that focuses on individual student needs. And that's what this whole system is all about, is that we're trying to meet the students where they're at and bring them up to the level that they can achieve before they leave our school system. Oops. This is a nice visualization of what an MTSS system looks like. You have the whole child in the middle, and what we're focusing on with really creating a very solid system is academics, behavioral, and social emotional needs of the whole child. By doing this, what we're looking at is the multi-tiered system of support. When we're looking at the academics or the behavior or the social emotional, we're currently looking at what we're doing and what we can do to support every single student in our system. Really intentionally looking at every single thing we do from TK through 12th grade and make sure that we're supporting every student and meeting them where they're at. All definitely means all. This is another wonderful picture, which I think describes it all, is that first tier, what we call tier 1, is all students. It means what do every single student get in the classroom currently to help them access the curriculum. That is for all students. Every student will receive some sort of modification, accommodation, or support scaffold to reach the information. However, some students, approximately 15%, will need more support, and that's called Tier 2. And then approximately 5% more will be what we call Tier 3, will need some additional supports. So we start out with about 80%, and then about 15% will need some more, and then 5% more. This is an example of what we're starting to create. This is the high school, but an example of what we're trying to accomplish is what are we currently doing? What are our indicators that state that a student needs a Tier 1 support? What are those cut points? What are those measures? What are those matrix? And then should tier 1 not be working, what gets them into a tier 2 level of support? And then should that not be working, again, behaviorally, academically, or socially, emotionally, what do we need to do tier 3 to provide some intensive support? Next steps, we are part of a grant out of Orange County, which deals with TK5 for helping us create a multi-tiered system of support. But as a district, we've put that into effect for TK12. We are working with the secondary level as well to make sure that we're just not focused on the lower grades. So we are doing a LEA, which means this district-wide needs assessment. Then we do the primary and elementary school do their own local inventory. And then we are developing our MTSS team of personnel. And then we start creating the flow charts with the backup documentation of what we're currently doing and what could we be doing better in the school district. And the last part, which all feeds in together, is a lot of professional development for not only the administrators, but also the teachers and the classified staff. Any questions?
Any public comment? Trustees, questions, comments?
One question. Thank you very much for this, Mary. It was great. On the slide with the great flow chart about begin here and then indicators, am I correct to assume that for this example, you just use more academic indicators because obviously there's could be other indicators as well, correct?
Absolutely. So, bless you. Sorry. What I'm thinking about is that the one that we have there as far as the flow chart, if I can go back there, this one has to do with ELA academic intervention. There'll be one for math, there'll be one for behavior, there'll be one for social emotional. Okay. So you'll see a different flow chart for each one.
Okay, thank you. That's great.
I have a quick question kind of tied into that. When they get ranked, let's say in a tier, do they take all like the academic, behavior, social, and they get like one, they're like ranked in one tier, or is it separate for each?
It's
like
separate for each tier, whatever the need is for that student. Right. And they might have two tiers that there might be two areas that we're focusing on. But, you know, when we're looking at English, not everybody needs some social, emotional, or behavioral support. They just need academic support for English. So it just depends on what the student needs. Okay. And that's where the MTSS teams come in play at each one of the school sites.
Thank you.
But I'm just saying that this does not preclude that even if you have it's a little confusing to me because there could be mental health needs without academic needs, and we would be addressing that as well. So that would kind of fall outside of the MTSS?
No.
Would it would be part of the social emotional. So someone could be in tier 2 solely because of social emotional needs and not academic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. What we're looking at is the whole child. Mm-hmm.
I have one more question, if I can go one more time. And then are parents kind of aware of how the system works, or how you guys are doing the tier? I mean, are they informed about well enough of how that is?
No, I can honestly say that no. We're starting to do the information right now, and the staff are starting to be trained. All the administrators and myself and Mr. Heller attended a conference this summer to start the process. So we're right at the beginning of the process, but we are currently drawing up what are we doing right now in our systems for English support, math support, social emotional, which is the mental health, and then also behavioral, which is our PBIS. What are we doing? And then let's move forward. But it's part of it. It will be part of it.
Yeah, I really like the that flow chart that you guys are talking about too, just to better track the kid. I mean, and obviously you guys are still developing it, but I think looking at the whole child in those 3 areas is very, very great that you guys are doing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for presenting the report. We're on to 8B, which is a presentation on English learners at Robert Louis Stevenson Middle School. Corinne Cox, please.
Good evening. So I am continuing to discuss English learner, what's happening in the district following what Mr. Cinto did last month. Let's see. Am I pointing it the wrong direction, or you have it? It doesn't like me. Okay. Just to start off, I wanted to provide some basic demographics of what's happening at RLS. We have 270 students this year, which is bigger than it has been in a while. Our 7th and 8th grade classes are quite large this year, pushing 100 kids in each of those. 6th grade small, though. Of those 270 students, 46 of them are considered to be English learners, which is 17% of our population, and another 62 of them have been redesignated at some point between kindergarten and currently as fluent in English, and that's another 23%. So the majority of, we have about 50% approximately of our students are Hispanic, and so about 40% of the of our students either are English learners currently or have been redesignated. And once students are redesignated, especially in middle school, they're still really working on that academic language and really working on being fully academically fluent. Even though they've met the criteria to be redesignated, which means, yes, they can do the work, we're still able to offer them additional support, and we still want to make sure that we are clear with teachers who those students are so that they can understand that, yes, they're redesignated, but that doesn't mean they're a native English speaker, and it doesn't mean they don't still need some extra support. Mr. Cinto focused last month on Principle 3 and 4, so I wanted to talk about what we're doing in terms of Principle 2 on the California English Learner Roadmap. Principle 2 has to do with quality of instruction and access to the instruction from our students. And really the point of it is that just because a student is learning English doesn't mean that you lower the level of learning for those kids. So really what this is saying is, yes, we want to make sure that we're being intentional and that we're focusing on what they need, but that we're not dumbing down the curriculum, so to speak, to make that happen. And so our challenge is to ensure that we do provide them with intellectually rich, developmentally appropriate learning experiences that still support what they need to get to the level where they can be successful across all of the academic content areas. So what we're doing at RLS to make that happen is the first big difference this year is that we have a dedicated ELD intervention teacher that was added just this year, and that has already made a huge difference anecdotally. So far, we don't have assessments yet at this point that are showing it, but teachers have been very excited to see that the students feel like they know better how to be a student and that they're really focused on what they need to be doing, and they're getting significantly more individualized instruction. Just the way that we changed it I'm going to skip down, by changing it to having 3 English language development classes. Last year we had 2, and they were just based on the student's grade level, not on their language level. And so we just couldn't make it work any other way. But by having that dedicated teacher, we were able to provide an additional English language development class, and now it's separated out, regardless of what grade level they're in, based on their needs in English. They continue to use the regular adopted curriculum in all of those classes, and then it is differentiated as needed so that those kids can really get what they need. It's also been really helpful because a large chunk of our students who are English language learners, if they're long-term English language learners, by the time they get to the middle school, so many may have been born here and have been in our school since kindergarten. If they haven't been redesignated yet, it's often because there are other learning issues in addition to the language part. So having a bilingual resource teacher, we were able to hire somebody who, first and foremost, is an amazing resource teacher, because that's our biggest criteria when we're looking at somebody, but it's a huge benefit that she's also bilingual. So that's been really helpful. And again, having the additional newcomer class so that the 5 kids that we have that really don't speak much English at all can get the kind of support that they need. And that's been incredibly helpful. And then we have been able to work the schedule out so that Mariana Olguin, our Spanish teacher, is able to team teach that class on Thursdays, which is the block day, so that those students are getting additional support from a native language speaker in addition to the English teacher. So it's been a really positive addition to what we're doing. And the language development classes, all of them, again, use the core curriculum. They are learning the same thing. All students are reading refugee, so are they. It's just that they're really focused on building academic language so that they can understand better what's going on in the other classes. Obviously, for the newcomer classes, it is the standards, but it's also really, for some of those kids, they're not literate in their native language either, and there's some of what Mrs. Simon's doing is teaching phonics. I mean, that we're starting really at the very beginning. So are 7th graders in her class doing the same kind of 7th grade standards that a general ed student would be? No, they're not, because it's not real. They can't. They don't know how to read in Spanish, let alone in English. So she's working on, we take them where they are and we get them where they need to be. So redesignation is something that we base on 4 criteria. One of those criteria is that the teachers have to approve. Another is the parents have to approve. A third criteria is that they have to score well enough on the English language assessment, which is called the LPAC. And then the fourth one, which is the one that is the most challenging, is that they have to score high enough on the CASP test. So that's the part that's really difficult, because the CASP test is difficult anyway for our English only students, and so it can be really challenging, especially for some students who might have double concerns of English language not being fluent in English, and also possibly having learning disabilities, and sometimes it's hard to tell what it is. And so our redesignation rates are, they vary every year. It really depends on who comes, what they've had, where they've been. It just depends, but we work really hard on getting as many kids as possible redesignated, because we know how important that is, that when they start high school, that they are in a place where they can be successful. Any questions?
Any public comment? Trustees, questions?
It's great. It's a good plan.
I just have a comment. I'm really glad and happy that you guys have that resource now at that school, and that especially working with that group to make them fluent. I guess another thought would be, do we have an ELD teacher at the high school, or is this just at the RLS right now?
There is.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And we're actually meeting with Dana Simon, the ELD teacher, and with the special ed teachers, so that we can figure out, okay, for those kids that really their issue is that they have other things going on that is making it challenging for them, she's not a resource teacher. So what strategies, she's great at differentiating, but what strategies can she use working in tandem with those special ed teachers and with the Spanish teacher and with the English teacher, all together, putting everyone's heads together and using all of their professional expertise so that they can reach all of those kids. It's been amazing to be able to have the opportunity to have everybody be able to collaborate in a way that best supports those students who need it the most.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm assuming, Corinne, that the 9 students so far, it's just so far this school year, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's great.
Yeah, and those 9 students that were redesignated are still getting support as needed. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to item 8C, which is a written report on the 2018-2019 student discipline and expulsion data. Is there any public comment? Trustees, any questions about this written report or comments?
I was going to open it up because there was a comment that I had. I'm just trying to, from a historical thing, are we still seeing the bulk of our suspensions coming more towards like the final semester of the year? Was that kind of the past, or are we looking at suspensions? The 2 suspensions that we have to date, is that average for this point of time, year to date, other years, or are we really that low? Does that question make sense? The year to date suspensions. Where are we usually in October, say last year? I mean,
I can historically, I can just tell you from a principal standpoint, but I know that the principals can certainly come to the podium if I'm wrong. But usually we start out the school year very slow. And then as spring comes around, after the holidays, we start to see things pick up. And they get comfortable with the school site, they get comfortable with the rules, and they start kind of pushing a little bit to define how far they can go. So we tend to see more in the second part of the school year than we do the first part of the school year, if that helps.
But all the same, we do seem to be pretty low this year.
That's a good thing.
And what's great to see is over the 8 years, the trend. I mean, when you look at the trend, if it's going way down, so I think it's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Next item is 8D, which is information on the 2018-2019 California dashboard. Ms. Mary Allen, please.
Erica's going to be my sidekick tonight. So this is an informational item, and it needs to come up every year in front of the board. The California School Dashboard is the California Public Schools Accountability Measure now. And the dashboard contains reports that display the performance of schools and districts of certain student sets for the state and local indicators. And so what we're looking at tonight is simply the local measures. The state measures are drawn from our testing, from our suspension rate, our graduation rate, but the local measures we have to fill in. So if you can go right back up, Erica, just to the very top there, you'll see it says priority 1. I'm going to be calling it indicator 1. So indicator 1 has to do with what we call conditions of learning. Do we have our teachers assigned to teach the content that they're credentialed for? Do we have the instructional materials for all of our students? Are our facilities in good conditions? And what I want you to just note on this one is that we've met this category. Indicator number 2 has to do with implementation of academic standards. Are we meeting all of our standard implementation across the board? We are, and there you will see some areas. This becomes public in December, and I'll get to that. But you'll see some areas that we have a 4 or a 3 because we're just in the process of looking at some adopted materials for history as well as moving into science. But the other ones we are absolutely, currently we perform Common Core standards across the board, and we've met this category. Indicator number 3 is parent engagement, extremely strong category for this district. We do a lot of outreach to our stakeholders in a variety of different mediums. And so this category is met as well. The next indicator is school climate. This has to do with the Healthy Kids Survey as well as the LCAP measures that we have. And we've met this category. It doesn't mean that we don't have things that we need to work on, but that's part of what we have to fill out, that here's what we see. These are the areas that are our strengths. These are our areas that we need to grow on and work on. So it just means that we are definitely measuring this, and we're having a focus for school climate. So we've met this category, and they've added a new category on for the indicators, and that is called access to a broad course of study. And we have met this category. This has to do to make sure that we're having all of our students be able to, at the high school level, go through A through G course requirements, have access to AP classes. At the middle school level, we have them in math, English, science, history, all the core curricular. So it's just everybody has access to everything they should have in order to get a high school diploma at the highest degree. And we've met this category. So this is an informational item. It will go up for finalization before November 16th, and then the actual presentation of our data on the dashboard for the state will come out in December, and it'll have in written form how we're doing.
Thank you very much. Any public comment? Trustees, any questions or comment? Okay. Item 8E is a written report on the 2018-2019 Local Control Accountability Site Plans. Is there any public comment? Trustees, any questions or comments concerning that?
They were nice and detailed, and I appreciate all that work. And because I did read all of them, I want you to all know I did read them. So, and I truly appreciate it because I know it's a lot of work, but it's super informative, and I find it very super informative. So thank you.
Exactly, and then we get to review them in June.
Yes.
Okay, that takes us on to item number 9 under Human Resources. This is a review and request for the approval of the 2018-19 Certificated Seniority List. Dr. Mary Lou Wilson.
And I'm going to turn this over to Mary Allen.
Oh, and back over.
So what you have in front of you is the approval for the seniority list of certificated employees. This list has been reviewed by SHTA representative.
Is there any public comment? Trustees, any questions or comment?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the 2018-2019 Certificated Seniority List?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We're on to item 9B, which is a review and request for the approval of the 2018-2019 seniority list for the CSEA employees, classified management, and confidential personnel. I'm going to guess Ms. Mary Allen.
And the seniority list as well for the classified employees has been reviewed with the CSEA representative, and we're asking for approval on this.
Is there any public comment? Trustees, questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. We're on to item 10A, which is information and request for approval to open a window for participation in the state authorized retirement incentive for certificated non-management staff and adopt resolution 18-13. Ms. Sandy Stubbs, please.
Thank you. The district entered into a memorandum of understanding with the St. Helena Teachers Association that shifts the timeline for the offering of the 2-year retirement incentive, which is more commonly known as the Golden Handshake, that's in the current agreement. With this MOU, the retirement incentive will be offered in 2018-19 instead of 2020-21, and it will then be offered again in 2022-23, 2026-27, and then every 4 years after that. And then that MOU, of course, is contingent upon board approval, and that will appear on the consent agenda later this evening. A necessary step in offering the retirement is to have the board consider approval of a resolution that opens up a retirement window during which certificated non-management employees can retire, and so that window would be May 1st, 2019 through July 31st, 2019. And then once the board approves that resolution, which opens up the window, certificated non-management employees in the district will have until January 3rd, 2019 to submit their letter indicating that they will be retiring within that window. Now, the incentive would only be approved if the district can demonstrate savings over a 5-year period with this program, and so the board would need to approve the public disclosure of that information during the January board meeting. And so with that, the board is asked to consider approval of Resolution 18-13, opening up that window for retirement.
Is there any public comment? Trustees, any questions or comments?
No.
So something coming up that I just saw, and does it have the date in which we have to find out if there's somebody eligible as part of this agreement? So is there a cutoff time when is that part of this? I just don't see a date there.
So that would be the January 3rd date for receiving the letter from the teachers. And then once we have all the letters confirming which of our certificated non-management employees are retiring, then I would prepare the calculations for the January board meeting.
And sorry, is it on the resolution or is it on, I just don't see that date.
It's in the agenda language, and it is the,
And I see it there, but I don't see it in the actual, does it need to be? It's just more of a question of.
No, that's a district decision when we want to make the date to receive the teacher letters, and it's the overall timeline is that the board has to approve the resolution, which opens up the window during which employees would retire, but then we have to have the board approve those costs no later than January or February, because then the county has to do their review and then it goes up to the state. So the date upon which we receive the letter is built into that whole structure.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry to kind of go down a path of oddness. Anyway, any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. We're on to item number 11, technology and technology update, digital citizenship. I believe this is going to be, actually, I'm going to pass it. Who's it go to?
Andy Stubbs and Mary Ellen are going to provide you with an update on digital citizenship, and this is directly related to our parent information night we had recently for middle school and high school parents around the use of social media and technology.
Thank you.
So, Mary and Andy.
Thank you. Let me see. So digital citizenship, we have a scope and sequence for technology education all the way from kindergarten through 12th grade, and part of that scope and sequence has to do with digital citizenship. So digital citizenship, as you can see up here, I'm not going to go through it, but I just want to highlight a few points, which are the norms for appropriate responsible technology use. And that came up loud and clear in the presentation that went to the parents in reference to screenagers, that it's not enough to just give them a tool, you have to teach them how to use those tools responsibly. And these are the 9 elements for a comprehensive digital citizenship program. And again, we do try to cover all of these in a variety of areas, mainly through our library media specialists as well as our teachers.
And so digital citizenship is actually infused in a lot of documents and official policies and procedures within the district. So for example, Board Policy 0440 addresses a district technology plan, and Board Policy 6163.4 addresses the student use of technology, and you can see some of the verbiage there whereby digital citizenship is addressed. Whoops. We also have a board policy that addresses employee use of technology, and then in both the student use and the employee use of technology, those board policies reference a district acceptable use agreement. And so within that acceptable use agreement, it speaks to appropriate use of technology and social media guidelines. We also have students sign a use agreement for our mobile devices, so our Chromebooks and our laptops, for example, and there's language within those use agreements as well that calls for students to use the equipment in a responsible way. And then also, parenthetically, our student handbooks include language around cell phone use, that those must be turned off during the instructional day. And Mary already spoke to our technology scope and sequence. Here's an example of the portion that addresses digital citizenship, and so you can see some of the target skills that are focused on and at what grade levels. And then within the classroom, we have here a few examples across the district of what digital citizenship looks like in terms of actual instruction. And so, for example, at the primary school and the elementary school, there's the use of the Common Sense media modules by the library media specialists. And our library media technician at the high school is another example, provides 4 workshops each year that address the 9 elements of digital citizenship that Mary referenced earlier in the presentation. Whoops, I'm a little quick with the trigger finger tonight.
Is there any public comment? Trustees, any questions or comments?
I just kind of a comment, and you may not even know the answer to this, but you know, in the student handbook where it says cell phones must be turned off, I'm assuming that is that in the high school handbook and RLS handbook? That's the two, I would think, right?
Yes, I believe it's referenced in both.
Okay. And do we find that being practiced? Yeah. Okay. That's great. No, I'm that's encouraging.
They're allowed to use their cell phones in the classroom setting if there's an instructional purpose for it, but other than that, they're not to be on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Zinto, could you speak to the pocket charts that you have?
That's exactly what I was going to ask to come up and say. Yeah, no, this year, as requested by a number of teachers, we implemented, we bought the pocket charts, the old calculator charts, because people were using their own makeshift. Some of our old calculator holders of the past actually turned into cell phone holders. So that's something we purchased for every single staff member this year. The math department put it in effect last year, but it actually has helped reduce the non-allowed use of cell phone time in classrooms.
That's great. Thank you.
I have a comment.
Yeah, please.
Quick comment. Yeah, I really like the idea that you guys are giving the kids the information about how to be responsible, safe, and appropriate with technology. I think also too the parents should be getting this as well. I know that at least for like kinder through elementary, they obviously know how much time they can use on their school device. But a lot of times, I mean, I'm not saying my kids, but other kids are using technology or personal devices, and just kind of giving that information to parents about really what's appropriate for them to be, like what's appropriate screen content, and then what's appropriate time, and then really just to know how much time the kids are getting at school, because kids are tricky. Sometimes they'll tell you, oh, we could do this, you know, it's part of the homework. So just kind of communicating that to the parents, because I know a lot of parents that they really aren't as informed about how much tech their kids should be doing and stuff. So I just think it's a good opportunity to kind of give you know, parents more tools and information, and then just as parents and adults just kind of model that positive behavior and try to disconnect every once in a while. So just my 2 cents.
Mary, what was the name of that group that you came into RLS a long time ago? And they would give the kids presentations on digital citizenship and cell phone use. What was the name of them?
There would be 2 companies that I would bring in every time, and one company everybody knows, the FBI. So they actually have speakers that come out that talk about social media and digital citizenship and appropriateness and so on and so forth. And the other company comes from Maryland. And I too, but it's like 01 something like that. And I will find that and bring that back, because that was a great corporation that came out as well.
Right.
And so every other year, this year we have Tyler Derman on November 7th, and he'll be speaking at RLS and the high school, and part of his conversation for the students will be on social media. So not just what we teach in the classrooms on digital citizenship, but we also have several presentations. He's here that night, and he will touch a little bit on social media, but the Screenagers, I can say that particular film really highlighted that you need to practice what you preach to your students, to your son or daughter at home as well.
Thank you.
That was certainly a lesson I saw.
One other it ties in. Are we still seeing a device-free 8th grade field trip to Yosemite? Is that still happening?
Yes, it is challenging. Kids, as Julio pointed out, can be sneaky. And so we're going to be a lot clearer about, with parents, to have them double check that their kids aren't bringing a backup phone so that they can turn the backup phone in and keep the other one. But, you know, it was interesting, though, because the feedback we got from Yosemite, the kids afterwards came to me and said, I was really scared about not having my phone for the whole time we were gone. I was really worried about that, but actually it was amazing to not have that pressure on me all the time. So I had several kids come to me and really express their appreciation of having the opportunity to just be completely technology free for days at a time. You know, it's good for them to see that they can survive after all.
Thank you very much. We're on to item number 12, which is the consent agenda. Trustees, is there any items you'd like to pull off the consent agenda? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. We are on to item 13, communications, board member reports. Ms. Lisa Pelosi, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I know Erica has a few photos for me, and that's okay. I'll talk and they'll come up. I think the first thing I'll report about, which I'm sure I know that Dr. Wilson touched on her Friday memo, was the family barbecue, and it was awesome. There was the attendance was great. The energy, I hadn't been in that barn in a long time, and the energy was great. And it was really great to see the kids having lunch with their parents, connecting with staff. And to add on to what Sammy was saying about the kids at that school, I was engrossed in watching them clear their trays and recycle. And I actually took a photo of it because I just couldn't believe these little beings and how responsible they were being in recycling and putting their trash and compost. And it was great. And Andy, she was behind the line. Joe Perez was cooking. It was a great day all the way around. And the other thing to let you know is this week at the primary school, there are parent-teacher conferences going on. And as you recall, those are a wonderful opportunity for parents to have some one-on-one time with their child's teacher and other instructors and check in and see how they're doing and if they have any questions to get those answered. So that's been going on. The other thing, if there are other photos, no? They're not there? Okay. Miss Sanguinetti, she took some students on a field trip to the high school horticulture program, where both the high school students and the primary school students planted mini salad bowl gardens, excuse me. And they're really cute photos, so I'm sorry that you don't get to see those as well. But this is a part of a celebration that is done monthly for students that are being recognized in the PBIS program as well. So they were really happy. They had cute smiles on their faces and everything else. So that's the bulk of things at the primary school.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on to superintendent subcommittee reports. We've got the board policy committee, which met on Monday, October 8th, 2018. And we have later tonight on item 14B, we have to the board the presentation on those items. Next was budget, which met on Wednesday, September 19th. Ms. Pelosi.
Okay. I'd say some brief highlights from that meeting was that we had representation from all the parent groups there as well, which is always a nice contribution to that meeting as well. And they presented their budgets for the year and talked about being able to meet all the requests that they were hoping. There's a little shift in some granting cycles at the foundation and at RLS, but it seemed like it was all working. Everybody's communicating with their principals. And as always, Andy does a great job of providing the documentation for the committee, highlighting things that's important for both the committee and the district that they're watching, whether it's assembly bills, federal level, state level, things like that. And we just review those. She went over some of the budget assumptions as well that she wanted to point out to the committee. And we'll meet again in November. Yes.
Thank you. We had an equity, climate, culture meeting, which was on Tuesday, September 18th. Julio or Lisa, whoever would like to speak to that. There you go.
All right, so the equity, climate, and culture, that was September 18th. I think in attendance we had Superintendent Mary Lou, Chris Heller, TK teacher Magda Guerrero, Trustee Lisa Pelosi. We had a high school student, Diesel Chapelet, and myself. And part of the job for that, or the purpose of that committee, was to create a new mission statement. This was previously known as a cross-culture committee. So really what we did is we discussed and worked on a new mission statement. We weren't actually able to finalize that statement, but we left it as a live document. So part of the process is the committee is going to work on it and hopefully have something back by the next meeting. One of the focuses is that we did want to have all three areas of equity, climate, and culture within that mission statement. So that's kind of what we're working on there. We reviewed some notes from the last cross-culture meeting, which was May 3rd, 2018, and we kind of just looked at some of their recommendations and projects that they had made throughout the year. And we really wanted to see which ones would align with our new committee so that maybe we could try to complete some of those. And at this meeting, we were also, the committee was allocated $4,000 as seed money so that we can kind of put some of these recommendations into action. And so the one that we agreed on, or that we felt was important to from the cross-cultural committee goal, was they wanted to provide Spanish books for families at the primary and elementary school. And they had I think they had set a budget for 500 at each school site. And so our committee approved to allocate $1,000 each at the primary and at the elementary school so that bilingual books and Spanish books can be given to families and students. And then pretty much just looking to recruit more committee members. So if anyone is interested in this committee, it's a very interesting committee. So you can reach out to Chris Heller, one of our committee members. And then lastly, we talked about adding an RLS student on the committee. We got some great feedback from our high school student. And so we feel that obviously high school and middle school are totally two different schools. And so we'd like to see the input from a middle school student if we could do that. So.
Great. Thank you very much. Facilities Committee met Wednesday, October 12th. Dr. Wilson.
Yes, may I give a report for the Facilities Committee? It was well attended, although not quite as many members as we had when we were building large buildings. Andy provided us with an update on all of the summer projects. She reported to the Facilities Committee the work she and staff have conducted in looking at current potential projects, went through the list of potential projects for the upcoming year or two and received consensus, and you'll be seeing those items in a near future meeting. And then finally, we received a presentation from a company, Energy, on the possibility of solar LED HVAC systems in our district, and you'll be receiving more information on that at a later time.
Thank you very much. LCAP Steering Committee, Thursday, September 20th.
Do you want to take that as well?
Julio.
That's kind of a long one, but I'll go for it. All right, September 20th. So this is the fifth year of the committee. I think everyone was in attendance pretty much. We had the trustee Lisa Pelosi, superintendent, Chris Heller, Andy Stubbs. All the principals were there. We also had Yvonne Vosti, Lisa Gibbs from Napa Valley College, and Babs Cavanaugh. And I believe there was maybe 2 or 3 district parents in attendance as well. The first thing we did, we kind of reviewed the purpose of and the role of the LCAP steering committee. So we took turns going around the group to kind of try to explain what the committee's purpose is. When it came to me, I think I was the last one, so I had to come up with something original. But I basically said that the committee's purpose is to steer the ship of the district in the right direction and just making sure that all students are taken into consideration. We also discussed with this committee about the district mission and beliefs with our group, and I think they said that the actual statement was maybe 8 or 9 years old. So, and some of it is still, we thought it was still relevant, but definitely as a committee, we feel that we could make some changes. We discussed and brainstormed ideas on that process of redoing that vision, mission, and belief statement, and so the committee thought it was important to include community input, and we just kind of discussed the best ways to get a variety of input from parents, staff, and community members. For student achievement, Chris talked about the achievement gap, and I think the big one there, Chris was talking about the professional learning and coaching model that's happening already at the school sites. I think they talked about it in the summer and a little bit at the beginning of the year, but it's actually being implemented. So essentially principals are coaching the teachers are receiving the feedback, and that's going to improve the instruction. So they're continuing to improve the instruction, and that's great that our staff is continuing to better themselves. For engagement, I believe each principal gave some information and feedback about their site survey that they did last year, and just kind of some next steps that they're looking to do this year. I'll do a brief summary. For the primary, I think 2 things Principal Sanguinetti wanted to do next year was she wanted to have this year have a high school counselor talk to parents about college readiness, and also have some kind of meeting or forum with parents about school safety. At the elementary, Principal Pearson talked about sharing more info about intervention support for kids and enrichment support with the families. And let's see, at the RLS, Principal Cox, she talked about the new leadership class that is basically focusing on positive climate and culture. And she described it as a way for the students to be part of the school events and more of the decision making, just to kind of help build that sense of school belonging. And then Principal Cinto talked about training the staff in Blackboard and reintroducing postcards to capture the individual class collaborations and accomplishments. Let's see, the last thing we talked about was the committee. We talked about the student panels, and last year we did just a high school student panel, and so we talked about adding a middle school panel this year as well. We also discussed the parent forums and what would be the best way to do the outreach. So obviously we want to include the entire community, but we talked about focusing on specific group leaders and community leaders to participate in that. And then the last thing we did was we created a second subcommittee, which I think is Ben, Chris, and Karen, and they're going to develop suggested questions for the student panels and the parent forums. Yeah. Paid attention.
Next up is Preschool for All, Monday, October 8th.
Yes, the Preschool for All board received a financial report, and I'm pleased to say that due to the generous donations of this community and members outside of the community, that the Preschool for All budget is very strong and viable. It's really good news. We also received a report on enrollment. This year, earlier in the year, the board made a recommendation to allow for enrollment to occur throughout the school year if openings are available and preschool families make the request, and that has happened for the first time this year. So a child was placed into preschool that will start, I believe, the first week of November. So really exciting to create that flexibility for our families. We also received a report update on the Latino Literacy Project. This is a new avenue for parent information, the parent nights, and we have 10 or 11 parents participating in the literacy project, and they'll be meeting once a month with instructor Nadia Torres and Julio Guin when he is available to join her. And then finally, the Preschool for All will have a presence at the Harvest Festival this year on October 20th from 11 to 3, providing information for families, and also at the Day of the Dead celebration at the Upper Valley campus on October 28th from 12 to 4. They'll have an information booth there as well with an altar. So Preschool for All is healthy and viable and serving preschool students across St. Helena. It's very exciting.
Thank you. And the last subcommittee report is wellness. which happened on Thursday, October 4th.
So I'll be doing that.
Okay, Maria.
So first of all, we had a lovely bowl of Mediterranean rice bowl that was absolutely delicious. It was served by our cafeteria staff, or created by our cafeteria staff, and served to all the members of the committee. We had several new committee members, which was really great to see brand new parents come to a committee meeting. Kind of want to give a shout out, thank you to those parents for committing the time to join a superintendent subcommittee for the year. We went over the school wellness goals, this living document that we created. I believe now it's been about a year and a half we've had the wellness document, and we basically reviewed it for the first meeting of the school year. And we also looked at what each school is doing with the Kaiser funds that were allocated per school. And basically also what the district is able to do with the funds that were allocated from the Kaiser grant, which was $3,000 for the district. And there was some clarifications as to how those funds could be used and how they will be used. I think that was about it. We talked about some opportunities as far as wellness fairs and possible professional development opportunities throughout the year. And it was a very lively discussion. And it was also nice because there was a spouse of a board member there as a parent. So that was lovely as well.
Okay. We are on to, under communications, superintendent's report.
Yes, a reminder for all of you, Tyler Durman, as Mary Ellen mentioned earlier this evening, is coming to us on Wednesday, November 7th. The parent event is at 6:30 in the evening. I do have a number of copies of one of his book available in my office for checkout, and counterintuitive. If you're interested in reading this book, please stop by and Erica or I will check it out to you. Lots of great information, and as I shared with parents at the Wellness Committee, whether you have a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old, you're going to have a 16-year-old. And so it's important, even today with a 5-year-old, that you attend this workshop. Tyler has a lot of great insight. Also, you've already heard a number of times about the middle school book, Refugee. I also have copies of this. It's my recommended reading for the month of October. So if you're interested in reading Refugee, just stop by and you can check this book out as well. A couple of other items for you. I would like to turn the microphone back over to Trustee Pelosi for just a quick moment so that she can identify the photographs that are coming up on the screen. The computer gremlins were put to rest and we found them. So Trustee Pelosi, if you could spend just a moment making sure we know which photograph is which.
Okay. Oh, well, yes, there you go.
Nope. They're back.
Well, there is the family barbecue that you can see, and this one here on the far right are these children recycling and just have it just dialed down.
Trustee Pelosi, is your microphone on?
Oh, sorry. I apologize. So that's what those shows Mr. Perez and Andy there working, and again, just the recycling at the station that the kids, and I'm telling you, it was really impressive. Well done. And then these are like cute artwork in the office. I just thought people should see cute primary school artwork. I just thought it was something what they did in their summer. So I thought it was cute. And these are the photographs of the field trip of the celebration that has been, that the kids joined, the high school students at the horticulture program, building their mini salad garden bowls. See how cute. Thank you for finding those.
Absolutely. And then would like to draw everyone's attention always to the principal's reports with a reminder that not only are they giving items on student success and professional excellence, they're also noting students who have been acknowledged each month and also recognizing parent volunteers who have supported their schools. That was a new addition this year. And then finally, if I could ask Principal Sanguinetti to come to the microphone for a moment, I'd really like some input from you as the primary principal with regards to the parent conferences and the bilingual books.
Right, yes. So when we heard that we were getting this money from the cross-cultural committee, we just jumped on it, really, and we ordered books. They arrived last week, and we were able to give bilingual books out to our families at parent conferences, and they were thrilled. It was just really cool to, we just want to celebrate, and also through Latino Literacy Project, just that whatever language you speak, you're your child's best teacher, and they were so excited to get these books, and they were bilingual. They were in Spanish and English, so thank you for the support of that. It was really good.
That concludes my report.
Excellent. We're on to item number 14A, discussion and request for approval of the 2018 board principles. Dr. Mary Lou Wilson, please.
Yes, you recall, board members, in a study session, you created these principles earlier in the year. They came to you in September as a draft and an opportunity for you to further discuss the principles. And at this time, I would suggest to you that you could approve them as your guiding board principles.
Is there any public comment? Trustees, any comments, additions, changes? Is there a motion for approval of the 2018 board principles?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are on to 14B, information, discussion, and potential approval of revision of board policies, October 2018. This is what I alluded to, and this one is going.
I'd be happy to begin the discussion. You're welcome. The Board Policy Committee did meet earlier this week, and what you see on the screen are a number of updates. Primarily, the updates are coming to us from CSBA, and the Policy Committee accepted the recommendations from staff. There are a handful of board policies that we wanted to give you a little bit more information on prior to taking them to a recommendation. And so if we could, Andy Stubbs, begin with Board Policy 1330, use of facilities.
Thank you. And I was pleased to see this one come around because the board did a lot of work a couple of years ago to approve a new fee structure and new procedures and practices around facility use. And so with this board policy, it allows you to choose 3 different options for your fee structure. And the options are, first of all, an amount not exceeding direct cost to all community groups, or option 2 would be no charge to nonprofit and youth and school-oriented groups, or 3, no charge to school-related organizations. And so I'm recommending that the board consider approval of this board policy with option 3, which is no charge to school-related organizations. For other nonprofits and so forth, they pay just a small percentage of direct costs, you may recall. And so adopting this board policy aligns with what we put into place a couple of years ago. And then additionally, this board policy adds a section on the use of school facilities as a polling place, which had originally been in board policy 1400. And it just establishes language around that the district may allow school facilities to be used as a polling place, and a city organization could request that use. And then with regard to the AR, the recommended AR from CSBA has some of the refined language around sales and service of alcohol for facility use when students are not present, and the paragraph that we're adding there directly correlates with the work that the board did around that around a year ago when we updated our administrative regulations to reference the option to obtain a daily permit. For example, if we lease out the Performing Arts Center and the organization wants to serve wine or sell wine, they can do that as long as they follow very strict guidelines. And so their recommended AR addresses all that in a nice way. And so I'm pleased to recommend that board policy for board approval.
And Ms. Stubbs, could you also review 3312.2 educational travel program contracts?
Yes, and this had formerly been an administrative regulation, and it stipulates what the district must do with regard to education travel contracts. And so if there is a field trip, for example, that involves travel, then it states several criteria. For example, the organization must provide 24-hour contact information, and I really like this board policy because it outlines all the things that we're already doing, and it reminds us of best practices in this way. And this is just for field trips that are district sponsored. And so I would recommend the board consider approval of that one.
And then if you could also review board policy 3515.21, unmanned aircraft systems, otherwise known as drones.
Thank you. And this is a new optional policy, but it has really good guidelines and requirements around the use of these types of drones across the district for instructional purposes or operational purposes. And I think as we move into the future, we're going to start to see more requests coming to be able to use these on district property. So it's good to have some guidelines that also include the federal regulations established by the Federal Aviation Administration. And so I would recommend approval of this optional policy.
Thank you, Ms. Stubbs. And then finally, we wanted to also bring to your attention Board Policy 5112.5, open and or closed campuses. This board policy does provide an option of having high school campuses as open or closed. You know that our campus has been open for a number of years, and we recommend to continue with the open campus option. There is additional language in the board policy at this time that Principal Cinto will put into place beginning at the the second semester that involves students who are leaving campus during a free period will require parent permission, a one-time parent permission, so that the school is aware that a student is off campus during their free period. Many of our students during a free period do stay on campus, and there are a few that do leave campus, and so that parent permission will be required pending approval of this board policy. And so given all of those board policies, many of them have ARs. It is noted in the board agenda language that the administrative regulations are there for information only. That's not something that you vote on, and we recommend adoption of these policies at this time.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment? Trustees, any questions or comments?
I had one question on the educational travel contracts. The one, it said there about that whether or not the educational travel organization maintains insurance that supplies coverage in the event of injury to any student. But I'm wondering about chaperones. Do we have to be concerned about that? If chaperones, does the word chaperone have to be in that language?
I think the idea of chaperones lives within our own policies and practices, I believe, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from trustees?
Just on the, oh, no.
Julio, anything? Okay.
Thanks.
So these could be informational, or we can do action tonight if everybody is comfortable. If we have a motion to approve the recommended policy committee's recommendations for us tonight. Is there a motion?
Actually, I do have a question on AR 4157.2, the ergonomics. The recommendation there is missing.
Oh, this was a new one that I think we did adopt.
Okay.
Is that right? So, any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve these policies?
I'll make a motion to approve these policies.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
President Conwell, if I may,
Please.
also add, outside of those policies, I did want to provide the board and the community with an update with regards to the work on the Administrative Regulation 5117.1, which is the interdistrict transfers. The Board Policy Committee did send, as I reported last month, that to staff to do some additional work. We continue to do that work, and we actually are going to be talking with the Curriculum, Technology, and Innovation Committee this next week about a couple of different recommendations. And so we ought to have more information for the governing board and a recommendation potentially at the November board meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you. That takes us to item number 15, future agenda items. Anyone have anything they'd like to add to a future agenda item?
Not at this time.
Okay. All right. We are on to item number 16, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting ended, 7:46.